The reading for you all today is called Awakening Now by Dana Fall. Why wait for your awakening? Do you value your reasons for staying small more than the light shining through the open door? Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. Now is the only time you have to be whole. Now. Now is the sole moment that exists to live in the light of your true nature. Perfection is not a prerequisite for anything but pain. Please, oh please, don't continue to believe in your stories of deficiency and failure. This is the day of your awakening. Forgiveness is a delicate subject. It plays different roles to different people. But regardless of the differences of meaning, the overall message seems to be forgiveness is vitally important to our shared human experience. It seems that we receive this message over and over again from every direction possible. Medicine tells us that forgiveness is about our own health. It has been proven time and time again that there are serious health benefits for forgiving. Holding on to resentment influences our heart health, our weight, and our overall view of the world. Resentment has been likened to swallowing poison in that it can do damage to our physical, mental, and emotional selves, certainly spiritual as well. Therefore, we learn that to grant forgiveness to others is to grant forgiveness to our whole selves so that we might cure or prevent an ailment. Socially and culturally, we understand from a young age that forgiving others is a social expectation. To do so is a sign that we are healthy, disciplined, and respectable members of our community. And should we pass some unspoken, socially acceptable deadline for forgiving, we feel guilty and are encouraged to feel less than. You ever heard the phrase, be the bigger person? Of course, one of humanity's biggest influences, religion, has a say on forgiveness too. The act of forgiveness has been an integral part, perhaps the central theme of religion itself since its inception. We're taught in holy text after holy text that forgiveness is a divine act, and that only through the mercy of a God can we be capable of forgiving an offender. Across nearly every religion, the same message of forgiveness to achieve peace or appease God is taught. This includes our faith as Unitarian Universalists. In fact, forgiveness played a huge role in our faith's development. Our Universalist heritage formed from Christians who just couldn't understand a God that would punish humanity for all eternity. Later, forgiveness remained a tricky aspect of the faith as Universalists just barely escaped a schism between those that believed in immediate reconciliation with God following death, and those that believed that we had to hang around and be punished for just a little bit before reconciliation. Luckily, the former prevailed, as God, the very definition of love, was understood to be all-forgiving and therefore eager for reconciliation. You know, the weight we place on forgiveness just fascinates me. And the huge role of religion in the integration of forgiveness meant I spent a great deal of time studying it at school. I took many a course on theodicy, which is a theological term meaning defense of God, or why do bad things happen to good people? Over and over again, I studied theologians like Leibniz, who purported that this world must be the best of all possible worlds, because that's the only way that an all-loving God would create it. I also studied Voltaire's Candide. I see you're familiar. A French satire of Leibniz's The Odyssey, whose title character is taught to chant, "This is the best of all possible worlds," just before something awful happens, time and time again. And of course, I studied Job. I studied a lot of Job. My professor, one of them, did a wonderful job presenting an alternative interpretation. The one I personally liked best, the one that spoke most to our human experience of forgiveness, was the idea that Job never forgave God, but instead grieved and wrestled with God all the days of his life, even finding small ways to defy God at the time of Job's death. More than any other scripture, this interpretation made sense to me. The New Testament tells us to turn the other cheek, which can work. But it doesn't really tell us how difficult it is to actually follow. Sometimes we offer forgiveness so that we can move forward in our life, but forgetting the injustice just doesn't work sometimes. Sometimes that righteous anger still exists, waiting for the right time to show itself. Perhaps we, like Job, just want to give our daughters an inheritance when we die, just to spite the offender. Ultimately, though, it's easier for me to think about forgiveness through the lens of historical sociology. Hang on, let me explain. We understand that the origin of forgiveness predates religion now. In fact, forgiveness is an evolutionary device used to create harmony in tribes or clans, the inclusion of which was a necessity if our ancestors wished to stay alive. Community meant food, shelter, safety, procreation, all the basics of continuing life. Our golden rule came from the need to remain in community with one another, a promise not to steal, cheat, lie, or kill, made living in close quarters a real possibility. So too, forgiveness was born out of a necessity to move past offenses so that one might remain among the community. Looking at it from this perspective, the concept of forgiveness has then always held a hefty weight in our lives. It truly was the difference between life and death for our ancestors. If we look at the act of wrestling with forgiveness this way, we understand it as not being rooted in the divine, but as very human, an act that is integral to our experience here on earth. This seems to take a bit of the pressure off, in my opinion. We no longer need to compare ourselves to the understood qualities of the all-forgiving divine. Our humanity tells us that forgiveness is not a token that can always be granted easily or gifted to another. It's not a form of currency, allowing us to buy back the losses, the pain, and the suffering we've experienced or inflicted. And frankly, if we root our impulse to forgive in our bodily experience, we can feel confident enough to use the rest of our universal human qualities, reason, compassion, anger, to decide if forgiveness is even a necessary outcome to begin with. Sometimes it's simply irrelevant. And at other times it's plain out of the question, an inconceivable notion even. In some cases, being forced to forgive before we're ready is a re-victimization of the pain that we've experienced already. In other words, forgiveness does not always mean healing. It does not always mean peace. One of the other courses I chose to take in school was on the Holocaust and the churches. And we studied post-Holocaust Judaism's view of forgiveness. It was understood that after such an event, the very term needed to be reformulated. What does forgiveness look like for your apathetic neighbor, for institutional evil, and of course, those directly involved with genocide? How could these wrongdoings ever be forgiven? How could an entire population of people move on? If forgiveness always meant healing, then how could those wronged ever heal? Jewish teachings explain that forgiveness can never be granted by someone other than the offended. That means that forgiving the Holocaust was off the table, because all those who died could not grant forgiveness themselves. Out of this understanding came the idea that we didn't actually forgive the action, but rather seek to reestablish the humanity within the person inflicting the injury. Let me repeat that. The understanding came that we needn't actually forgive the action, but rather seek to establish the humanity within the person who inflicted the injury. This makes me feel good. That our humanity, our love for humanity, our very humanity remains uncompromised after having been wronged. That even in the most brutal of offenses, our humanity remains intact. And that yes, as difficult as it is to imagine sometimes, so does our offenders. As Unitarian Universalists, we affirm the inherent dignity and worth of all persons. That doesn't go away when someone injures us. We don't look at the face of our offender or a criminal and think that their worth as a human being has been compromised. Believing this principle means we never believe someone is too far gone. So when we forgive, we have this beautiful opportunity to remind ourselves of the other's inherent worth and dignity. A chance to live out our first principle. And so we're left with one possibility. One last possibility, I should say. A middle path, as the Buddha would have us imagine. Perhaps forgiveness does not have to be all or nothing. Each day that passes is a new opportunity to find a sliver of forgiveness for ourselves or our offender. Little by little, piecemealing it out as we become comfortable with it. And days or weeks or years might even pass before we can extend another sliver of forgiveness. But eventually, we might make a place for a sort of peace this way. A peace that looks different for each of us, one that cannot be defined or outlined by me or anyone else. So I ask today, what will your peace look like? How will you find it? I'd like to make a space for a simple guided meditation now. For some of us, there are people we may not be ready to forgive. And for others, we might not be ready to forgive ourselves. Take this meditation as a chance to reconcile with those who can, never feeling pressured to move beyond your own readiness. Read the prompts, and then I'll leave a space between. Let yourself sit comfortably, allowing your eyes to close and your breath to be natural and easy. Let your body and mind relax fully. Breathe gently into the area of your heart. Let yourself feel all the barriers you've erected, any emotions that you have carried because you've not forgiven. Not forgiven yourself, not forgiven others, perhaps not forgiven your understanding of the sacred. Let yourself feel the pain of keeping your heart closed. Imagine the sacred humanity within yourself and your offender. Zoom in on it. Hold it at the forefront of your mind. Then breathing softly, begin asking and extending forgiveness as you feel ready. Reciting the following words quietly to yourself. Letting the images and feelings that come up go deeper as you repeat them. For forgiveness of others, there are many ways that I have hurt and harmed others, have betrayed or abandoned them, caused them suffering, knowingly or unknowingly, out of my pain, fear, anger, and confusion. yourself remember and visualize the ways you've hurt others. See and feel the pain you caused out of your own fear, pain, and confusion. Feel your own sorrow and regret over each instance. When you are ready, sense that finally you can release this burden and ask for forgiveness. Picture each memory that still burdens your heart. And then to each person in your mind repeat, I ask for your forgiveness. I ask for your forgiveness. For forgiveness of yourself. There are many ways that I have hurt and harmed myself. I have betrayed or abandoned myself many times through thought, word, or deed, knowingly or unknowingly. Feel your own precious body and life, the miracle that you are. Let yourself see the ways you have hurt or harmed yourself. Picture them. Remember them. Feel the sorrow you have carried from this and sense that you can release these burdens. Know that you are worthy of forgiveness and extend forgiveness for each of these, one by one, as you're ready. Repeat to yourself. For the ways I have hurt myself through action or inaction, out of fear, pain, and confusion, I now extend a full and heartfelt forgiveness. I forgive myself. I forgive myself. Forgiveness for those who have hurt or harmed you. There are many ways that I have been harmed by others, abused or abandoned, knowingly or unknowingly, in thought, word, or deed. Without causing further pain, let yourself picture and remember these many ways. Feel the sorrow you have carried from this past and sense that you can release this burden of pain, that extending forgiveness in your heart is ready. Now say to yourself, I now remember in many ways others have hurt or harmed me, wounded me out of fear, pain, confusion, and anger. I have carried this pain in my heart too long. To the extent that I am ready, I offer them forgiveness. Those who have caused me harm, I offer my forgiveness. I forgive you. Let yourself gently repeat these three directions for forgiveness until you feel a release in your heart. For some great pains you may not feel a release, but only the burden and the anguish or anger you have held. Touch this softly. Be forgiving of yourself for not being ready to let go and move on. Forgiveness cannot be forced. It cannot be artificial. Simply continue the practice and let the words and images work gradually on their way. In time, you can make the forgiveness meditation a regular part of your life. Letting go of the past and opening your heart to each new moment with a wise, loving kindness. Please find your heart.